I do feel like at some point, what do you have to do to get people to address the problems in our financial system? I mean, I think that, it starts with institutions that are too big to fail. I don't really understand that. How do you have a group of people operating by different rules than the rest of the economy? But that people could think it was right to organize the stock market as a kind of two-tiered thing, with some people having special access and advanced word of prices and so on and so forth, and everybody else just taking it. It's just shocking. So I guess I feel like all I can do is be the messenger. Or find the messenger, find the characters to tell the story. If people don't actually care enough to do anything about it, then what's the point? There are a lot of things to write about. There's a lot of things to write about. There are a lot of great stories in the world. The Wall Street happens to be a gift that keeps on giving, and there are some wonderful stories to tell here. But why write books about Wall Street as opposed to about something else if this is just going to be nothing but entertainment?
There's also this. Many people say that what you have shown is just one part of what's wrong with Wall Street and the financial system, that there are a lot of other things there that are wrong.
Look, if you looked at this kind of the big headlines since the financial crisis, you see a pattern. And the pattern is there's a kind of systematic meddling in the markets, a rigging of the markets. You've the LIBOR scandal in Britain, the rigging of foreign exchange rates. It kind of feels like one after another. Commodities manipulation. So this story feels of a piece with what seems to be happening more generally. And the question is why? Why is this happening now? And I think there's a reason for it. I think that this story kind of shows it in a very detailed way, that technology has, to a large extent, eliminated the need for a lot of what Wall Street used to do. So we don't need people to bring buyers of stocks together with sellers of stocks. They are, they can be brought together in a single black box without people.
And high-frequency trading is now 50% of what happens on the New York Stock Exchange.
Yes. But the broader point is that if like the old sources of revenue and profits for Wall Street are being eaten away at by information technology, the street has to respond by finding ways to capture revenue. It's sort of the rigging of markets is a response to a decline in their natural usefulness of the institutions at the heart of capitalism. I think that's true.
How did you find the story?
It was curious. I've said now, I think 3 times that I was never going to write another book about Wall Street, and they keep walking in the door, these stories. So this started when I got interested in the story of Sergei Aleninkov, a Russian computer programmer who had left Goldman Sachs, mailed himself some computer code. He was a high-frequency trading programmer at Goldman Sachs, and was pretty instantly arrested by the FBI and ended up being sentenced to years in jail, and spent a year in jail before his conviction was overturned. And I just followed that story in the paper.
And where did you think that story would lead you? Did you look and say, if somebody would do this, there must be a lot of money involved, and something is going on here about those codes, if Goldman Sachs was so concerned about losing them?
Yeah, so I had 2 thoughts about it. One was, when they arrested him, the prosecutor said that he should be denied bail. He should be kept in prison because this code that he took, if it gets into the wrong hands, can be used to manipulate or undermine global financial markets. And I thought to myself, Goldman Sachs are the right hands? Like how much worse could the hands get for the code? And then I thought, you're telling me there's computer code that can be used to sink the global financial markets? How can that be? What is this stuff, this high-frequency trading? And then when he was sentenced to the 6-year or 7-year prison sentence, and you saw this financial crisis come and go, with which Goldman Sachs had a lot to do, and you see that the one person from Goldman Sachs who gets sent to jail after the financial crisis is the guy that Goldman Sachs wants to put in jail. All that seemed to me material. I didn't know where it was going to lead. But the first question, of course, I had after I got in touch with Sergei Aleninkov and he agreed to talk to me and tell me his story and let me tell his story was, what is high-frequency trading? The term gets thrown around, but like a lot of Wall Street creations, it gets created and everybody wants to pretend like they understand what it means. But in fact, nobody really understood what it meant. And it was a term of art that really only entered into the public discourse when Sergei Lenikov was arrested. I mean, he was described as a high-frequency trading programmer and said, oh, yeah, there must be something called a high-frequency trading programmer. But it was never explained. So I needed someone to explain that to me. And that led me to the subject. The subject, what I did is I called some investor friends, and I said, do you know what high-frequency trading is? And they said, kind of, sort of, but the person who's walked through our office and has explained this world to us, and it is more shocking than you know, is Brad Katsuyama.
They actually said that.
Yeah.
They said Brad is the guy because he's going around trying to figure it out.
Yes. This young man who was then, when I first heard his name, I think he was still at the Royal Bank of Canada, had taken it upon himself to sort of find out how the stock market worked. I mean, that was the question.
Because he thought it was not working fairly.
Because he himself was a trader of stocks at the Royal Bank of Canada. He ran the stock market trading department at the Royal Bank of Canada. And in 2008, when all the craziness is happening in the financial sector, he notices a change in the market. And it's a profound change that up to that point, when he went to go buy 100,000 shares of Microsoft, and it was scattered across 13 public exchanges in New Jersey. He would look at his trading screens, and there'd be 50,000 shares of Microsoft offered at $20 a share, and he could hit a button, and he would get the shares. Starting around 2008, when he hit the button, the shares would vanish. He'd get a few, and then the price would go up. And it was as if someone knew. There was a ghost in the machine. Someone knew what he was trying to do before he actually got to do it.
And they did it, and
they did it and sold it back. And sold them at a higher price. That's right. So he first thought that it's like a computer glitch. He thought he was like banging the side of his machine and calling tech support. He thought it was his machine. Yeah. And it takes him a while to figure out. And visits to money managers and people who are in the stock market to realize it's a system-wide problem, that something has gone screwy in the market. What is it? And this is the story of the book. The story of the book is his investigation. Yeah. It's one man trying to figure out how this newly automated, this newly computerized stock market actually functions.
See, but that's a signal trait of yours. You go out and look at something that is problematical and maybe evil or maybe fraudulent or maybe illegal, any of those. And then all of a sudden you find some good guys trying to figure it out or trying to do better than the system.
Well, part of this is my own sloth and indolence, because if it was
you were slothful and indolent?
Well, in this sense, that if it were, if you left it to me to figure out what was going on in the stock market, I'd never figure it out. I needed someone to figure it out for me. And
you could tell their story better than they could.
And the fact that someone had bothered to do this Canadian person who had no business thinking I'm the one who's going to become the world's expert on how the United States stock market is actually functioning.
And we're talking about 2011, 12, aren't we?
Well, his problems start in 2008. Yeah. By kind of late 2009, he's figured out a partial answer to his problem, and he figures out what happens. This is the amazing thing to me is, so he's sitting, his computer desk is his desk where he's trading desk is in southern Manhattan, and when he hits his button to say buy 50,000 shares of Microsoft, that signal is going up the West Side Highway, out the Lincoln Tunnel, and the first exchange it reaches is called the BATS exchange, which is created by high-frequency traders, and they pick up a signel.
And let me interrupt you 1 second, because it's going to that exchange, and then it's going to a whole bunch of other exchanges.
Right. It's got to go through. It's light traveling through fiber. It's like physical distance matters, and that happens to be the closest exchange. The high-frequency traders are sitting there waiting to find out what he wants to do. They have built faster routes from that exchange to all the other exchanges. They race ahead of him. They buy the Microsoft
what he wants,
and then they sell it back to him at a higher price.
Yeah.
So
that's simple.
That's simple. It's that simple. But it took him assembling a team of unlikely experts to figure out where the fiber runs.
Man, I love Ronan Ryan.
Yeah, so Ronan Ryan is the person who pulls out the maps. He's comes out of a manhole in New Jersey where he knows where all the fiber is laid. He has spent his life till then helping high-frequency traders get faster. But he doesn't understand the trading side of it. Ronan Ryan he's brought in by Brad, and the first thing he says is, the reason this is happening, he pulls out his maps, is that fiber runs like that, and it just gets there first, and they're waiting there.
So how did they get there first? Somebody asked. It's because they built their own fiber connection.
That's right. Everything. The high frequency traders have set up their systems so that they can get, the minute they pick up the signal of what Brad is trying to do, or what any investor is trying to do, they can beat the ordinary investor to everything else in the market. And it's just one form of predatory activity that they're engaging in, but it's the first one he discovers. And he takes this first insight. I mean, he ends up discovering a series of forms of predatory activity, but he takes it. It's one of his many decision moments. I think of Brad Katsuyama as someone who was presented with a series of choices, and he made the right choices, and then he's now presenting the world with a choice. We'll get to that. But he could have just joined the band of brothers and become a high-frequency trader.
Exactly.
Right. So he could have made money.
Unlocked the keys to the kingdom.
He
Could have gone into the kingdom rather than telling everybody else what the kingdom was like.
That's right. He's working for the Royal Bank of Canada. He could have just become one of the people who knew about this stuff.
He was already making millions. He was
already making millions of dollars a year. He could have made a lot more money.
Right.
Instead, his first reaction is, I'm going on a public information campaign. I'm going to go talk to money managers, people who manage the savings of ordinary Americans, and explain to them how their stock market looks rigged. And this is where the story, if you ask me kind of when I sort of clicked in and thought, this is a book, is when I realized that after a couple of years of his own private investigations, he had set himself up so he could walk into the biggest money managers in the country, tell them how the stock market was working, and their jaw was on the floor. So how does that happen?
Okay, just tell me, they're all surprised, because one of the questions I had for you was, hadn't people been looking into this? Hadn't this question occurred to other smart people before he did?
Yes. He just ends up with a more satisfying description and explanation than most other people. And he's still,
was he the only guy that sort of knew the answer?
Yeah, he was the only guy who was working at Wall Street who had hands on the sort of information you have inside a Wall Street bank that was willing to share that information.
And brought in people like Ronan Ryan and others.
A crowd of
Christoph,
characters.
Whatever his name was.
Yes, a crowd of characters who could explain where fiber ran.
And so he walks into the smartest money managers.
He walks into people, I mean, not just, he walks into Bill Ackman's office, the hedge fund manager. Right. And Bill Ackman told me, he said, when he walked in, we knew something was wrong. Every money manager knew something was wrong. They knew that the market was no longer the market. It was an illusion. That whenever they tried to do something, it was as if the market knew what they wanted to do.
Yeah.
And Bill Ackman said, I thought I had an insider trading problem. He said, I thought I had a leak. I thought when I wanted to go buy something.
Somebody was tapping my lines or something.
He thought that's what the problem. He said it was bigger. They actually knew what I was trying to do kind of in the moment.